Hello. Alright, let's start building our BTO layout. First things first, open up Google Chrome, do a search for BTO layout, and try and look for something which actually has the measurements listed in the picture itself. Or if you have your own, you can bring it in. So going into Blender, there are a couple of things you're probably going to need to enable first. Blender has a lot of built-in add-ons which sort of gives extra features. Go to Edit, click Preferences. On the menu on the left, you want to look at add-ons. And when you're here, look for the search tool and search Bool, B-O-O-L, and select this Bool tool. I'll show you what it does a little later. And if you give me a second, let me just enable my screencast keys so you can see what I'm doing. See if that works. Great, it's working. So the next thing to know is with the HDB layout, the floor plan itself has its measurements in millimeters. By default, Blender has all of its measurements in meters. So let's just change that so it's a bit easier for us. On the menu on the right over here, look for what looks like a little party hat with a little monocle. Click that, which is the scene properties. And under units, click the little arrow. And you can see that for length, you want to change it from meters to millimeters. Great. So how can you check this? Well, you can either click this little left arrow here on the viewport or press the key N for the shortcut. And you'll see multiple sub-menus open up. Yours is probably under item if you've not clicked anything yet. And if you now click your default cube here, you'll see the dimensions are 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. And one of the ways you can change dimensions in Blender is by just clicking one of the axes and then moving left and right. And you can see everything's in millimeters. If at any point you've got a contractor who for some reason has added multiple different SI units in his plan, not that that's ever going to happen, that's fine because you can still just go over here and just say, for example, put 65 inches and Blender does the conversion automatically. So it just makes things a bit easier. Next, some people might find it helpful to see the length of the actual cube itself or the edges when they are doing their building. And there's a way we can enable that. So with the cube selected, either press Tab to go to edit mode, or you can press the menu up here and select edit mode, whichever works for you. Look for the overlay menu, which is these two small circles here. Click the down arrow and look for measurements, edge, length. So now every time you have any edge selected, it gives you the measurement. You don't have to have this selected, but you can just keep it on for now if you find it's helpful. And remember, this only is an option you can select in edit mode. So if you don't see that, just make sure you're in the right mode. So let's tab out of edit mode. Let's press N to close the menu. And let's just bring in our image now. And the way we're going to do that is Shift A to add in something. Go to Image, Reference, and just look for wherever your floor plan is. And there you go. Now it's in Blender. The orientation might look a bit weird. It's only because Blender adds in an image based on the direction of where you're looking at in the viewport. But that's fine. Just make sure you have it selected and then press Alternate R to reset the rotation. And now it's exactly the way you want it. Something I'd probably add is that best practice in a software like Blender or any sort of imaging software really is to make sure you always have something named. At some point, you're going to have tons of objects in the scene and it's going to be really confusing. So let's make sure we have our picture selected, or you can select what scene is an empty here. You can either double click on the name or just hover your mouse over it and press F2. And let's just call it layout. Something else that we're going to do to make things a bit easier is let's put these things in different collections. So click layout, hold down shift, click the light, hold on control, click light, click camera, and then just press the letter M. New collection, and let's just call these, scene. Great, and for your cube, we'll change it to building blocks. So this way, if we need to, we can hide everything in the scene, and it'll make things a bit easier later on. So maybe we'll start with building a floor. Select your little default cube over here. Press G to select, Z to lock it to the Z axis, and let's just move it up and keep it hovering over there. Shift A to add an object, go mesh, plane, and now let's add a floor. So let's look at the measurements that we have in our little layout here. We can see that mine is 9650 by 8700. With the floor selected, let's just press F2, rename it to floor, press N as a shortcut key, and let's just add in the dimensions over here. So on the x-axis, that's the red one, it's 9650. On the y-axis, it is 8700. Is that correct? Yes, 8700. And it's going to seem a bit weird because it looks like the floor has enveloped the HDB floor plan. The floor plan itself is not based on any units, so it's not going to be the right shape or size. Well, it's the right shape, but not the right size. Let's just fix that. So select the default cube if you have it hovering over there, and you can press either H to hide it or move the little eyeball icon over here, click it. Let's press the Z over here to make sure we're in the top view. Double check the top here. If it says bottom orthographic, you can just click the Z icon again and it'll flip to the other side. Z, change to wireframe, and now we have a view of everything. So click the layout, and for some people, you might find that it's a bit too bright, and at some point when we make it bigger, you can't really see the wireframe of the boxes. So maybe we'll fix that first. Over on the menu on the right, with the floor plan selected, look for what looks like a image icon. Click that, and you'll see an option here called transparency. Select that, and you can then lower down the transparency so that it's a bit more comfortable to look at. It's not too bright, while still allowing you to see what the numbers are. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to try and fit this to our floor that we've actually created, because that is according to scale. So S to scale, and just try and bring it up to what seems like it is perhaps the right size, and then G to move, and let's just sort of move it around until we think it fits. And if you need to move at smaller increments because your mouse is kind of sensitive, you can hold shift at any point and it sort of slows down the movement. So let's try and get this to fit. It doesn't have to be exact. I would say, just get it roughly, and that's good enough. A bit bigger over here. Yeah, sure, why not? Okay, I think that seems to work. Now let's bring back our little floating cube. If you can't see it, just press Z, go solid mode, select it, back to wireframe. And let's maybe build the household shelter first. And for now, if you find that the floor is not in the right sort of collection that you have up here, just select it and drag it to building blocks. We are probably going to want to avoid having to do that every time we add something in. So if you just click what looks like a folder icon next to building blocks, whenever you add something new, it gets added to that collection. Okay, so let's go back, select the cube, look at the dimensions. So household shelter, it is, let's go back to the top. Household shelter is 1700 by 2400. Great. So if you press G to move, you'll see it is, it's the right shape. Now, you might have encountered a problem at this point. If we use the middle mouse button and we change our view and go to solid view, you'll find that it's floating over the floor. And, you could either just change to the side view and press G and Z and try to finagle it and get it as close as you can, zoom in, get it close to the floor. You could do that, it doesn't have to be exact, but there's another way we can tackle this. So up here, you have what looks like a magnet icon. That's the snapping function. If you select that, click the little drop menu next to it. We then have options of where we want the object to snap to. So let's select face. And what we're telling Blender now is, I want you to look at this face and snap it to any other face that's close to it, which is wherever you're hovering a mouse icon. So if you press G at this point, and you hover over the floor, it's going to stick to the floor. And that's what you want. So great, it's on the floor. Left click to select. Go back to the top view. Z, go to wireframe. And let's move it all the way to the edge. There's two ways we can do this now. We can either press, go back up here, look for edge, because now we want this edge to line up with this edge. G to select, X to move, and when you hover over it, it's going to snap to the edge. The other option is, so unselect the magnet icon, G to select, G to move, X to keep it to the X-axis. And as you hover your mouse icon over the edge, hold Control. Control sort of is a shortcut to snap things either to edges or vertices, which we've learned about in the first episode. So we've got the household shelter here. Okay, new problem now. We don't actually know where it should be on the y-axis, and because we don't have anything here and we can snap it here, but we've got nothing to snap it to on the y-axis. And there's two things we can do about this. We can either really just leave it here based on the drawing and see it's similar enough because the drawing is to scale and we don't have to be exact unless you're making a 3D printout or something. The other option is to create a little measurement box. So what do I mean by that? Have your household shelter selected, and just so we're consistent, let's press F2 and rename it to useless. It's household shelter. Shift D, that is the shortcut key to duplicate. So now you have another household shelter. Leave it anywhere, and let's get the dimensions for this space over here. So 1700 on the x-axis, that's the same. It hasn't actually given us what the y-axis is directly. So the good thing about Blender is it performs arithmetic. So let's take 8700, minus it off by all the numbers here, and you'll get what's left. So y-axis 8700 minus 2400 plus 4000 plus 1250 millimeters. There you go, perfect. And now we have what should be this space over here. G to grab, Y to move it on the y-axis. We'll lock it to this edge. G, X, lock it to this edge. Now if we reselect the household shelter and we press G and Y to move it on just the y-axis, because we know on the X is already to the edge of the floor, we will lock it to the edge of this block. Now if we rotate our view, press Z, go to solid mode, we'll see it's in the right space. With this little thing, let's rename it to measurement block. You could just delete it here, but what I tend to do is I will move it away from where the working area is. If you ever need it again in a different part of the building process, we can just bring it in. And so here's where I'll introduce a new tool. You can either press G and X or Y and move it out of the scene, but some people actually prefer to use their mouse to move things. So if you look up here where you've got what looks like a little bow and arrow, which is a gizmo icon in object mode, press the down menu and you have the option here to select the move gizmo. If you have this selected, then you'll always have these three arrows that you can left click and sort of use to move around instead of always having to press G. You can leave that on if it's comfortable for you, you can turn it off. So just do whatever's best. We'll put this to the side, we've got our measuring gizmo, and let's keep building. So press Z to go to the top view. Z on the thing here, not Z on the keyboard. Now Z on the keyboard, wireframe. Let's select the household shelter. Shift D. Whoa, we selected the wrong thing. Just household shelter. Shift D to duplicate, and let's make the living and dining room. F2 to rename living room. And let's get the measurements. It's 3350 by oops, we've accidentally deselected it. 335. What's gone on? There we go. By 4000. Great. So GY, let's lock it to the household shelter. GX, let's lock it to the side of the floor. I'm just going to shift the view for a second. It's going to look a bit weird because you might be wondering, why do I have walls blocking this up? And I'd say typically people don't have walls blocking all four sides of the living room, but we will get to the wall destruction process later. If any of you have the edge selection on right now, you might look at it and say, hey, something's not right. It says here that all the edges are 2 meters by 2 meters, but I've very clearly put it as 3350 by 4000. So what's going on? So quick pause. This is something that's probably going to trip up a lot of people in Blender, and I'll give you a quick demonstration as to why that is, so you don't have to follow this part. I'm going to do Shift A, add a cube, float it up over here, and okay. So default cube is actually 2 by 2 by 2 meters, and you've got a scale of 1 here. So see what happens when I press S and I scale it up. It goes up in its dimensions, but it also changes the scale itself. Of course, Blender is saying, hey, this cube is now 1.9 times bigger than it was when you first added it. And because everything we've done is sort of built off this default cube, it sort of warps with the scale as well. So say, for example, over here, we've reduced the X from 2000 to 1700. So Blender is saying, okay, so the scale is now 0.85. But what we really want is for Blender to look at this object and tell Blender that actually this is a 1-to-1 scale. And the way we do that is we select everything. So the floor, the 2 rooms and everything else. Control A, make sure you're in object mode, apply the scale. And you'll see everything goes back to a scale of 1. So if I go back to this room, tap to edit mode and look at the edges, you'll see the measurement is correct. It's a bit of a peculiarity, but so anytime you find something's wrong or you build something, just make sure you select it, Control A, apply the scale, so you tell Blender this is what it should be like. Let's keep building. So we've got the living room done, let's go for the bedrooms. Let's select that, Shift D to duplicate. We've got 3150 on the x-axis. And we have encountered another problem. So we don't actually know how much this is. On the y-axis, it's not telling us. That's fine. Let's just lock it here first. Move it on the x-axis a little bit. And to be honest, because this is to scale for now, we can just try and eyeball it using the layout drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press tab to go to edit mode. I'll switch to solid so it's a bit easier to see. 3 to make sure I'm in face select so I can select faces, or you can click this icon up here, face select. Click the face I want to move. Go back to the top. Make sure I'm in wireframe mode and either use this green arrow or press G and Y, and then I can move that edge. So let's just put it roughly there. Yeah, that looks fine. Great. So let's go back to object mode and rename this to bedroom 2. Main bedroom. Shift D to duplicate. Let's press G and X to move it on the x-axis. There we go. Open up this menu if you've closed it. 3150 on the X, that's correct. 4250 on the Y. And G and Y, let's move it down. Let's lock it here. Great. F2 to rename main bedroom. Okay, not bad. We've got progress. Let's make the bathrooms. Shift D to duplicate. Let's just move it down somewhere here. 2050 on the X, 1850 on the Y. G and Y, move it on the Y-axis. Let's move it here. G and X, let's lock it to the floor. Hang on. Okay, so you'll see another issue going on now. We've moved it all the way to the edge, but somehow the walls don't line up. And the issue here, of course, is this measurement over here is until the inside edge of the wall. But here you've got one of those thick, black, indestructible, or well, you're not allowed to destruct walls. So let's just press G and Y, X, just move it in a bit and get it there. Of course, again, alternatively, you could just calculate the measurements for here, just minus it off by all the measurements here, and you'll get this small slither here. I'm not doing it exactly, so I don't think it's necessary. Let's F2 to rename. We'll call it WC1. Shift D to duplicate. X to move it around. It is 2000 on the X, 1850 on the Y. That's great. GX. Hold Control. Let's lock it here. Great. What's next? Kitchen. Okay, let's rename this first. WC2. Shift D to duplicate. 2000 on the X. Perfect. On the Y, let's do 1850 plus 2600 millimeters. There we go. G and Y, let's lock it to the Y-axis. Hold Control, lock it to the floor. And there's a thick wall here, so we'll just leave this gap here for now. Let's move it in slightly so the outside wall matches. Is that okay? That looks okay. That's fine. Actually, let's move it back out. I think, yeah, it should be like this based on the measurements that they've given us. Actually, yeah, so this is up to the inside of the wall, so we'll do G, X, lock it to the wall here. That's fine. So there's going to be a bit of an issue here. Ah, I see. So this is why layouts can be tricky. We've seen that the inside wall is actually 1700, not 2000. That makes more sense. Let's change that to 1700 and move it over here. You will see that there's a bit of a gap here, but we will address this later. Wireframe, let's go up. Rename this to kitchen. Yay, my favorite part of the house. Shift E. Let's make service yard 1550 on the X, 2600 on the Y. Shift Y. Hold control, lock it to the floor. GX. Hold control, lock it to the kitchen. And you know what? If we scroll down and we change it to solid mode, I think we've built a BTO. Okay, so let's do a few other things to make this look a bit nicer. And I think first things first, let's remove the ceilings from all these rooms. And how do we do that? So in Blender, a good shortcut key you're probably going to use a lot is the letter A in object mode. If you tap A once, it selects everything in the scene. Double tap A, it deselects everything, so that makes it a bit easier. So if you press A and switch things to edit, oops, I think I've accidentally selected the floor. Tap A, switch to edit mode. Now everything's in edit mode. If at this point the floor measurements are annoying you because you've already, done the layouts, you can go back up here, tap the small arrow, remove edge length, and you can turn it on at any time. We've got some random face selected, so let's make sure we deselect everything first. Now that we're in edit mode, double tap A. Make sure you're in face mode. Let's select all the different ceilings. So hold shift, left click, everything. X to delete, choose faces. There you go. That's gone. We should delete the floors as well. And this is something that will make the process a bit easier later on. Let's look for the floor. This is why it's good to have things labeled. Look for the floor label here in the scene. Press the eyeball icon. Let's make that disappear. Double tap A. Make sure you don't have anything else selected. Select all the floors. X to select. And let's select faces. Ooh, okay. We seem to have overshot a bit for this one. So let's select this. GX. Lock it to this. That's better. Okay, so why do we delete the floors? Let's do it by going to the next step first. Now everything's going to look a bit thin, really a bit flat. I want to give some depth to the walls. And how do we do that? Let's select the household shelter. Look for the wrench or spanner icon, depending on what you call it, here, which is your modifier. And Blender comes in with tons of modifiers, which are very powerful that helps you in the building. Let's click Add Modifier. And under Generate, look for Solidify. So this is telling Blender, I want you to give some depth to whatever it is that I'm making. And you might not see it very clearly, so I'm going to zoom in and you can see that there's actually some depth here. If that's not clear enough, look for the thickness over here, left click, and as you move it in and out, you'll see that you're actually giving thickness to the wall itself. And from what I'm building, you can see that if I scroll towards the negative, the thickness is building outside, and in the positive, the thickness builds on the inside. Looking at the way this is being made, it's actually really usually halfway through the walls, but sometimes it's on the outside. So we'll just split the difference and aim for making the wall thick on the inside. It's also so that we just don't end up overlapping all the walls instead. I'm not sure what the actual numbers are, but we will keep it at, say, 10 centimeters, so 100 millimeters. That seems to be fairly standard. And there you go. Now we have a household shelter. Next tip, let's see how we can do this a bit faster. So instead of going through every single one of this and adding the modifier and changing it, here's what we'll do. Make sure you're in object mode, hold shift, select all the rooms that you have. Make sure you select the household shelter last. If you haven't done that, that's fine. You can still hold the shift and reselect anything else. And whichever is in yellow is the active object. So that's the one that you've selected last. So with all the rooms selected, press Control L, that's to link. And remember, this Solidify that we've added is a modifier. So Control L, let's link modifiers. There you go. Now all the rooms have walls with thickness. And so this entire process that we've done, there's another way of going about it. You know, we can build the floor, we can build individual walls and everything. The annoying part then is, if you actually want to change one of it, you sort of have to mess about and futz about with the thickness a bit. But this way, you have everything fairly standardized. And if you need to change the thickness of the wall for one particular room, say the bomb shelter, and you think, well, this isn't thick enough, I think actually it should be 20 centimeters. You can just go to the option here, make it 20 centimeters, and there you go. You've changed the thickness of the wall immediately. This thickness thing can give a bit of a problem sometimes, just because of the way calculations work. So if we had not deleted the flaws in the sort of the prior step, some areas can start looking a bit weird, because then the floor's going to start getting thick, the ceiling's going to start getting thick, and then everything's going to be a bit boxed in. So this is what I found to be one of the easiest ways. Okay, now comes the fun part. Let's actually start destructing some of the walls that's in here. So living room, typically we don't have walls there. You can double check by going into wireframe, and you see, yeah, the wall ends over here, the wall, there's usually nothing over here. And the way we can do this is, let's go back to object mode, select the room that you want to destruct the wall down for. That sentence doesn't make sense. Tab to enter edit mode and select the walls you want to destruct. Okay, another problem. You'll find that if my view was like this, if I tried selecting the walls, you wouldn't have seen anything. You'll see it selected on the outside, but not the inside. Now this is because of the way modifiers work. When we add a modifier, it's something that you could say isn't really there yet. If I go to object mode, I have an option here to apply. If I apply it, then all the geometry that we've created gets applied, and we can start selecting individual sort of walls on the outside and inside and everything. But we don't want to do that yet, because we want to keep the sort of application all the way in the end once we're happy with how everything looks. So a way to go about this is select the room, go to the Solidify modifier, and you've got this option here called On Cage. So that is sort of telling Blender, hey, look, I know we've not applied the modifier yet, but I want you to pretend like we have, so that when I'm in edit mode, I can select the inside of walls as well. And now you can. So let's select this wall, shift select this one, X to delete, delete faces. There you go, living room. Where else? Okay, maybe something like this. You know, you've got your main bedroom, you've got your bathroom, and you don't really want to give them double walls. Here we see another problem. If we've selected everything to have a thickness of 100 millimeters, why is it that this one looks thicker than this one? So this is, again, because of the way Solidify calculates things. And here's what we can do about it. Select any one of the rooms that you want, and make sure you have this selected, even thickness. Let's get that selected. And it sort of makes sure the thickness is even all around. So let's just reselect everything else. Control L, link, whoops, we not selected that last. Link modifier. And that doesn't work. It's acting weird today. That's fine. So just select every room. Make sure you've got even thickness turned on. Sorry, we could have done this at the start, but this might be a easier way to illustrate things. Okay, great. So let's start destructing some walls. Bathroom here, we don't really want it to have double the amount of walls between this and the main bedroom, so tap to select. Make sure the cage option is selected. Let's destroy this wall and this wall. X faces. There we go. Maybe we can do the same here. Let's select this tab to go into edit mode. Select this one, X faces. Great. I'd say typically, most people probably don't want a wall between the kitchen and the service yard, or as you can see in the layout, there's usually a little, well, sliding door over here. But I'd say let's just get rid of the walls here. Also because it lets me introduce a new technique. So let's do it in the service yard first. Enter tab mode, delete this wall. So we'll find a new issue now. Let's say we select the kitchen, and what we need is like an L shape like this. So if we enter tab mode and try to select this wall and delete it, it deletes the entire wall. That's not really what we want. So let's use a new function, and that is the shortcut Control R. Make sure you're in edit mode, just tap Control R. You might not see anything happening, but if you move your mouse towards any edge now, you'll see a yellow line start showing up that looks like it's cutting through everything. Let's make sure it's on the edge of this wall, and left clicked just once, and now you get an orange line that you can slide around. So what we want is to slide it over to where this wall is, and so that we can cut it out. Remember the shortcut key, holding Control lets you snap it to an edge. So let's try and get it here. There we go. So now we have a new face. We've split this into two. We can select this, press S to select, delete faces. And hey, there you go, kitchen service yard. Fantastic. I also imagine the kitchen isn't walled off. So let's delete this. And how does that start looking? Not too bad. Not too bad. You know, depending on how we want to build it later, you can start deleting walls. You can start maybe adding your different loop cuts everywhere. So, you know, if you want a loop cut here, you can say, hey, I want to destroy this part of the kitchen wall because I prefer an open dining area, that sort of thing. That's fine. Go ahead, do that. I'll just keep this based on the layout for now. One final thing. Let's just actually build something for the front door over here. Let's bring the floor back in. Go to wireframe mode. And let's just go to object mode, Shift A to add a mesh, a cube, or we could have just, you know, duplicated any one of the rooms. That's fine. Let's just make sure it's actually on the floor itself. So Shift C up. Let's do this in solid mode and do what we did at the start. Magnet on, face, snap, G, hover over the floor, snap to the floor, magnet off. Back to wireframe. Okay, so how thick should this be? On the x-axis, it's 1775. Y-axis, I don't think it's given us the option for that. That's fine. So let's do this. Let's move it on the x-axis, snap it to this over here, scroll around, tab to enter edit mode, 3 to select faces, select the front. And if you're selecting it and you're wondering why isn't anything going on, it's because each face has a little dot in the middle of it, and that's what you want to select. So select this, go back up to top view, G to select, Y to lock it to the y-axis, and let's just keep it, let's just line it up a bit better. So Y, let's line it up to this, and then reselect our face, go up to move mode, and there we go. Oh, this seems to have dug into our kitchen wall. Doesn't really matter too much, but let's just make it look a bit nicer, shall we? So select your wall, tab to edit mode, 3 to select the face. Let's select this, G and X because you want to move it on the x-axis. Control select and snap it to the wall of the kitchen. Okay, I'm sorry, I probably should have addressed this a bit earlier. But some of you are probably wondering, hey, why is the thickness of the wall not the same? You know, we've already put even thickness everywhere, it's not the same. Remember how at the start I said that Blender has an issue with scaling if you don't apply it? So let's do that now. A to select everything, Control A, apply scale, and now everything is even. Sorry for not bringing that up earlier. Now, one final thing before we call it an episode. Let's fix this gap over here. And we can do that a few ways. Let's try this. Select the kitchen wall itself, tab to enter edit mode. With this face selected, we're going to use a new command. It's the shortcut key E. E is to extrude, so it extrudes the face and creates a new one. And we will snap it to the wall here. And there you go. You've got a new wall built. It covers the gap. And we have our BTO fixed. I think we'll leave it there for here. And the next episode, we'll start carving out the doors and windows for all the different rooms, and so that you can have your different connections as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Please let me know if you've got any feedback or criticisms. It's my first time doing something like this. And yeah, have a good day. Bye.